Hello, and welcome to the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group Biweekly Sync. It is April 26th, 2018. I'm Patrick Rogers, and I'm joined, as always, by Vesa Juvonen, and all of you out there in the audience. Thank you for joining us here today. Oh, I'm not the presenter. That's odd. 1 second while I take over as the presenter. As always, we start with a little introduction to what this call is all about. We are part of the larger SharePoint Patterns and Practices program, and the reason we started these special interest group calls, of which this is one, and there's also one for PowerShell and CSOM managed code development, and we're on alternating Thursdays. But we started these because we just had too much material to cover across too many different areas to do it all in, say, the one monthly call we used to be doing. So we split out and broke it out into these calls so we can focus in this call a little bit more on an open discussion around the SharePoint framework and client-side development patterns, especially those related to SharePoint. Not even necessarily SharePoint framework, but just the ways folks approach SharePoint development on the client side. And then as well, we talk about the PnP JS libraries, as well as the Office CLI. I should update this slide. The Office 365 CLI and the reusable controls, the React controls for SharePoint Framework as well. So really more of a specialized deep dive into those topics. And then, of course, we emphasize the community demos. I think that's, again, the most valuable part of these calls. Two links down there at the bottom. SPPnP-community will take you to the Microsoft Tech Community. That's a great place to get general questions answered if it's not necessarily an issue specific to a certain library, whether that's SharePoint Framework, whether that's PnP JS or something else. And maybe wouldn't be appropriate as much as an issue to that library. How do I design? How would you architect? Things like that are great for the Microsoft Tech Community. And the second link there, spdev-docs, takes you to the SharePoint developer documentation, and that is the all-up SharePoint developer documentation. So it's covering everything having to do with SharePoint development. So whether you're new to SharePoint Framework, want to try that out for the first time, you can see that. Whether you need to look things up on managed code development or add-ins, provider-hosted add-ins. It's been so long since I've done those, my brain couldn't remember them. But all of that documentation is there on that site and available, so do please check it out. I'm looking at the comments and I'm distracted by the fact we've all just learned alt keys. So our agenda for today, engineering update from SharePoint Framework. We've got PnP JS client library update, Office 365 CLI update, and the PnP reusable client controls update. And then we've got two great demos. The first from Lease, the Halfsite selection SPFx extension, a very cool little demo there, working with the new hub sites. And then Oleg has a building modern site pages with metadata demo, which is another cool technique he's developed and is going to show here on the call. So the Q&A, open discussion then at the end if we have time, and we'll see. So before we get into the rest of the agenda, I want to talk quickly about opportunities to participate in the larger Patterns and Practices program, and then specifically this call. We really encourage you and invite you to come demo both your SPFx solutions and your PnP JS solutions, or just your SharePoint-related client-side development solutions. So those are the kind of things we want to see on this call. We've seen amazing demos over the last years. Like, it's been years now we've been doing this call, and really encourage you. So if you've done some great work, please reach out. Great question. How do you reach out to us? You can reach out to us on Twitter. You can reach out to us via the issues list if you find no other way to do that. But hitting us up on Twitter is a great way. So either Vesa or myself that's a really easy way. Patrick scales better. I don't know that that's true. Other ways to participate: you can contribute on GitHub. So if you found an issue in any of the PnP JS or the SPFx libraries, please report those. contribute pull requests. We always welcome pull requests. We always welcome suggestions for enhancing the libraries, and really do appreciate all that feedback from everyone in the community. And then that final box there, just provide feedback. So feedback on everything we're doing. So feedback on these calls, feedback on the other work we're doing on SharePoint Framework, on things like that, and really do appreciate that and take that to heart, even if we can't act on it immediately. So I'll pass things over to Vesa for a quick update on SharePoint Framework.
Muting myself always helps. So thank you. I'm going to take over the presentation. So whenever the loading actually stops, come on, Skype. Da-da-da-da-da-da. You can add that. Yes. No. Why did we jump to the start? I don't understand. So let me actually jump to the right slide. Sorry for that. There we go. So a few things from a SharePoint engineering side related on SharePoint Framework. You can hear me, right, Patrick? Just double checking.
Yep. Okay. We're all good.
Cool. Okay, so first of all, the classic documentation slide. So we've done some work on the documentation side, and we keep on evolving this one. Pretty soon we'll release a set of scenario-based documentation here, which is really targeted for you to find out, as an example, hey, I'm heading to SharePoint Online, what is my options to do scheduled tasks, as obviously server-side time and jobs are not available, or how would I do ECM capabilities in SharePoint Online? So more kind of a scenario-based solution guidance is coming up pretty soon. There will be more and more guidance related on the modern customizations in here as well, and we've done some rework on the slides and structure. Sorry, on the content and structure in here. Now, the other thing what I wanted to quickly pinpoint, if my clicker would work, and it doesn't. There we go. Sorry. I'm standing in my room. So there we go. Running into the issues, please use the issue list, SharePoint DevDocs issue list. So report the issues in here. One of the classic ongoing, super long-lasting issues related on events is if Philip is on the call. I'm not checking the comments. It is finally now resolved, and it should be available. The fix should be available worldwide. Related on to eventing and SharePoint Framework extensions, if you're really into that one, we apparently still have a small challenge related on search experiences, and the problem is that the search experiences and the search doesn't actually, it doesn't have really a modern experience, which would play well with our extension. So we're still working on that one, try to get that 100% bulletproof. But the classic problem with moving to application pages or layout pages and then moving back on the modern pages, and then you would lose your extension, that has been now finally fixed in SharePoint Online. Now, one reminder, a kind of advertisements. So SharePoint Conference is coming up within a few weeks. I think we're now 3 weeks or something like that to the SharePoint Conference. In SharePoint Conference, there's great workshops. AC is going to, as an example, do a great workshop on SharePoint Framework, kickstarting and getting started on SharePoint Framework development. We from SharePoint Engineering, we have also a pre-workshop in Las Vegas, and this is mainly for architects or, let's say, senior developers who need to understand what actually is getting built and coming in the SharePoint Online. But we basically go through provisioning story and what's coming up on that one. We go through the branding story, what's coming up on branding story. We go through on the latest on SharePoint Framework. There's some pretty cool announcements coming up on that one as well. So the really what's coming and announced coming pretty soon as a new capabilities available. Now, this is the pre-credit day is on Sunday, 20th of May. There is some competition, like mentioned. This is overlapping, for example, with AC's thing, so please do consider which one you want to go. And then the actual conference is from Monday to Wednesday. Great conference to get the latest on SharePoint overall. Right after this one, by the way, if you are from Europe, there's also the European Collaboration Summit in Mainz. Mainz basically means Frankfurt, and that's a week after Las Vegas. So if you don't want to fly to Las Vegas and you're based in Europe, then you can go to Mainz. I will be there. Dan will be there. Not Gogan. Dan Holm will be there as well, and there will be a lot of MVPs in European Collaboration Summit sharing the latest what we talked about in Las Vegas as well. A lot of the sessions in Las Vegas unfortunately are not recorded this time. It's super pity because it would be great that these would be recorded, that you would be able to see them afterwards, but we will absolutely make sure that we will release webcast and training videos and updates and all of that, all of the new announcements in the dev platform. Now, other topics. This is a reminder, and this actually was released last week. Just to let you know, we do have the documentation evolves all the time. Good example is that you are actually capable of doing debugging of SharePoint Modern Solution, including web parts, directly on modern pages. So this is a really good example of a new documentation which has been evolving and added on the SharePoint doc side. It's kind of cool, the fact that you're able to do or load your customization development stuff on top of the production pages, so we're able to actually test and see how your web parts are working natively there. Obviously, there is still the workbench and everything else available. Now, on the usage, so I've again hidden the numbers, so you don't know what is actually the numbers. The usage keep on growing quite heavily. I don't know why, but apparently Monday is the peak day, or Monday, Tuesday is always the peak day, and then it goes slightly down after the week. People are getting tired. I don't know. Friday is actually a vacation day in certain days in certain countries in the world. So from that perspective, the usage going down is also understandable. But in general, SharePoint Framework adoption is growing extremely fast still. We're looking into doubling these numbers pretty much by end of June, July. So it's growing insanely fast. On the roadmap, no new really changes in here. So obviously we talked about the site design and site script actions in general, not related on SharePoint Framework, but already in few of the previous community calls. The Groupify API story is getting more and more ready. I think this will be actually released before SBC, if I'm not mistaken. So please check the tech community and our social media if you're interested on that one. The Groupify API documentation and also PowerShell documentation is actually already out. So you are able to go and check it out, what will be available for you whenever the Groupify functionality will be coming up live to your actual tenants. And then we have super cool stuff coming up on the SBC. For some of the, if you're coming into build, some of the new announcements will be actually covered in build as well. So you might want to follow up on the social media on the build announcements related on SharePoint. There's some cool stuff which I can't unfortunately leak in this call, but super cool stuff coming up. Cool, but that's really much quickly on my side. So nothing really new from a SharePoint engineering side because we're gearing up for build and gearing up for SBC to give you the new announcements and new things. We're working on a new version, obviously, on SharePoint Framework. So 1.5 version of SharePoint Framework is coming out pretty soon. I can't again give you an exact date. Last time we were planning to get the 1.4.1 out. It was delayed then 2 weeks due to certain findings. So I don't want to promise you a date because it might be that we can't keep the date. But 1.5 is coming out pretty fast. And the documentation will then explain what's new inside of it. I can't leak that yet. But Patrick, take it away.
So quick update today on the, if I can click the next button, on the client-side libraries. Still working on the CDN JS support. I finally, our issue in their repo has gotten some comments and some people assigned to review it, so I think we're getting a little closer to that getting pushed through. Really, at this point, we just need them to merge it. We're still doing the weekly beta releases on Fridays, and the major releases will be monthly. That's unchanged. Please check the changelog. Just to remind folks, we'll be updating that every time we merge a change into the dev branch. We'll update the changelog alongside that, so you can see as things are added. And we're working on bug fixes and issues. A couple issues that are in there right now about adding support for comments on modern pages and likes on modern pages. So that's something we're going to take a look at, trying to get into the next version for what's this month? Is April, for May. So we're going to try and get that in for May release. But just started looking at that this morning before the call, so we'll see how that goes. Did want to remind folks, SP PnP JS, the last version we will publish of that is in July. So this is just your friendly reminder to start migrating your projects when possible. And if you're starting any new projects, would very much encourage you to start with the @PnP scoped libraries. All the same functionality and more is there. And if you have any issues transitioning or migrating your projects over to the new libraries, please let us know. We want to try and make that process as smooth as possible, and then we will see what we can do to help you out as well. Link down there is to the documentation, so pnp.github.io/pnpjs gets you all the documentation for the new scoped libraries, as well as a transition guide to move from SP PnP JS to the new libraries. Following the hashtag PnPJS on Twitter, and you can follow me at MediocreBowler on Twitter for all the updates. I don't tweet a lot, so you won't get a lot of spam or anything from me, but you will get updates about when we publish betas or new versions of things like that. So that was a quick update for the PnP client libraries. Stepping now to the Office 365 CLI. Before I do this again, I'll see if Waldeck is on the call. I don't think he is. So I will do the update for the Office 365 CLI today. We have a new beta out, 1.2.0, including commands to get information about modern pages and their contents, their web parts, etc. Currently in preview, authenticating using credentials. So that'd be a username and password kind of thing, as well as getting information about hub sites and syncing the hub site theme, adding and removing list items, and removing files. And remove files dash, I think that's supposed to be a second bullet point, set property bag values. So that stuff is in process there. AC, sure, if you want to have a comment you'd like to share.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So one of the things that we're working on for the CLI is the ability to run a command and point it at a SharePoint Framework project that you've created that is not current version. So say you're on version 1.3.0 and you want to move to the latest version of it. We're working on a command that when you run it, it will spit a report out and say, here are the things that you have to do, here are the things that you should go look at, here are the things that were removed or added, etc. That's our P1, and then down the road we will hopefully be able to automate that as well, so that you'll be able to run, it'll spit a report out, but then it'll turn around and also say, oh, your project's now updated, we just updated it for you. We're going to do this in 2 stages, though. We want to make sure that not everybody has got their projects in repository and source code management, SCMs. So I don't want to do something that runs it and mangles your project and then stuff isn't working. You're like, well, what was it used to be? So we're going to do this in 2 stages and spit a report out the first time to make it a little bit easier for you. So Philip, cool idea. Submit it to the issues list. You'll see we got an issue up there on our repo, and it's something that we definitely want to do. I would love to be able to have a report that was spit out to an issue list and all that stuff for you as well. But that's all down the road. We're currently working on the way that we figure out and inspect the project and what needs to change first. So anybody has any questions about that, I'll jump in and watch the chat for you as well, but I don't want to take up too much of Patrick's time here. Thanks, Patrick.
Yep, thank you for the update. And of course, I'm sure you guys would be accepting pull requests to help with that effort as well, if anybody's interested in joining in on that or anything else with the Office 365 CLI. It's a great place to contribute. There's a bunch of open issues, so easy to get in and find something to work on. 2 commands down there at the bottom to install the release version rather of the CLI, and then you can install betas using the @next. I don't know what to call that, appendage on the end there will get you the sort of latest published beta of the CLI. On the SPFx reusable components, so these components are published again as part of the PnP ecosystem of things. And the first one is a set of controls that you can use in your SPFx web parts. And what they do is help you with sort of reusable, bottled up UI and functionality, so you don't have to recreate these things necessarily yourself for your projects. First one, the taxonomy picker control has been added, and those are the associated issue numbers there off to the right. There's a list picker control now added, and some general fixes and bug fixes and stuff like that have also been incorporated into the controls, and that's version 1.3.0. And then for the property controls, which are the same idea, reusable controls, but in this case, for the property pane, when you edit your SharePoint Framework web part, you've got some reusable property controls you can put into that property pane or that editor pane. Those are at version 1.5.1, and you've got a color picker now optionally returning color objects, and again some general fixes and bug fixes there. So if you haven't checked out these controls, they are a fantastic way to jumpstart your project. They're reusable, obviously. Drop into your project, npm install them, and you're all set. So save yourself a lot of time and a lot of effort. They're very nicely laid out, and they will really help you out getting started with kind of some of these common sort of components and controls. All right, so let's jump into the demos. The first one would be Luis. Luis, if you're ready.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Do you want to go ahead and start presenting?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Patrick. Sharing now, so please let me know when you can see it.
Yep, will do. Nothing yet.
It's loading.
Loading now on my side. And I got it. Take it away.
Okay. Thank you. So, hi guys, my name is Luis, and I'm gonna show you a quick demo about an application extension that I've done working with Halfsite. But before, I'd like to do a very quick demo introduction, about the Halfsites. So you can see here that I've created a marketing Halfsite. Halfsite, as you probably know, is something that Microsoft has released some weeks ago. So now we have the ability to create Halfsite and associate different other site collections into the Halfsite. In order to create a Halfsite, you're going to need PowerShell. So there's a specific register PnP Halfsite. It's a PnP command, and we can easily convert any existing site in a Halfsite. And once the Halfsite is created and you have any other site collection from the site information, you're going to be able to associate this site with a specific Halfsite. And once you do that, as you can see here, you're going to share the Halfsite navigation in the site and also the lookup field, so that's pretty cool. And also, we're going to be able to surface content from the sites inside the Halfsite into the Halfsite, as you can see here with the news roll-up web part. So so far there's a flat structure regarding the Halfsite, meaning that you can only associate the site with a specific Halfsite, and you can't have a Halfsite inside another Halfsite. So for now, it's just a flat structure. You can see here that there's an out-of-the-box sites web part that is showing the different sites that are inside this marketing Halfsite. In this case, I have 4 sites inside. But I thought that would be cool to show this information in the header with a drop down and make an easy way to jump into a site directly from the header in the Halfsite. So what I've done, let me open the other window. This is the same marketing Halfsite, but now I'm running the debug from my local. So if I refresh the page, you can see how in the header there's a drop down with the same 4 sites that are here, and I can jump directly into the site, as you can see here. And also the extension is ready to only render the drop down when you are in a hub site. So for instance, this is a non-hub site. So if I refresh the page, even with the extension running, there's nothing in the header because this is not a hub site. So how we can get this information, the subsites that are inside a hub site? Well, we can use search, honestly, and there's a nice article from Michael Svensson explaining how you can run some search queries in order to get these the sites that are inside a hub site. But thing is that I realized that there's an interesting and undocumented API that is giving us some information about the hub site. So I was just curious, and I gave it a try, and it's working fine. So here in the network tab, you can see that there's a call to a sites hub feed endpoint. So you are sending you can set the department ID. This is the GUID of the site that is the hub site. And this is giving us the same information, the items that are inside the hub site, also including the hub site itself, as you can see here, marketing hub site, and well, the different sites inside the hub site. However, note that this API is not inside the SharePoint. There's some other weird domain, West Europe 3, SP Home, blah, blah, blah. And thing is that to call this API, you're going to need a specific mirror token, as you can see here, meaning that you can't call this API directly using the SPHTTP client. But curiously, there's another API that is inside SharePoint. You can see here, there's SP Home Service context, and you can expand token. And that's going to give us a specific access token that you're going to be able to use to get the information from the other API. And also there are a couple of URLs domain here that you can use to compose the URL of the other API to get the hub information. So basically what I'm doing is just calling these 2 APIs from the extension. So let's jump into the code. So I've created an application customizer here. So as usual in the onInit, we are calling the render placeholder, and what we are doing here is creating a specific placeholder using the placeholder provider that is provided as part of the context. And in this case, I'm creating the placeholder into the top. It just means the header of the site. And then once the placeholder is created, we are just injecting the React component that is rendering the dropdown. So if we jump into the React component, first there's a isHubSite function, and this is what it's doing is checking if the specific site is a hub site or not. And to do that, there's a new property, Halfsite ID, in the site endpoint. And if we take a look to how it looks, this property, well, this is just the GUID of the hub site. But in case that you are on a site that is inside a hub site, this property also has value, and the value is the same, the hub site, the ID of the site that is the hub site. So in order to know if this is a hub site or not, we can call this hub site ID, but then we have to check if the value is the same value that the site ID, because in this case it means that is the hub site itself. So in this case is the hub site. So there's another function to get the token. So as I showed you before, using this SP Home Service context span token, we can get the specific access token to call the Hub API. And then finally, we are calling the sites Hub feed API. In this case, I'm just hard coding the URL, but as I showed you before, we can get this value also from the previous API. So in the department ID, we are sending the site ID from the context. So this is gonna give us all the sites inside the Hub site. As you can see, we have to set the specific headers, the leader token in the authorization header, and also this API needs to use to have another header called SPFx API context, and the value is just a string with the portal URL pointing to the absolute URL of the site. As I said before, nothing is documented about this API, so I just found out all this information just testing and trying. But with just these two headers, it's enough to call the API. So we are calling the API using the HTTP client, and then we are just mapping the information to my custom interface with the different properties. And finally, I'm just removing the Hub site from the collection, because obviously we just want to jump into a site that is inside the Hub site, but not the Hub site itself. So when the component is mount in the React lifecycle, we are just calling this get sites in Hub site function, and when it's done, we are updating the state in React with the information from the API, and then in the render, we are just using the Office Fabric drop-down component to just render the component. So that's pretty much everything from the demo. I don't know if there's any other question or topic.
Cool. So I'm going to jump in on here. So because there was already two persons on the IM window. What? It's undocumented, so it's unsupported, which is absolutely correct. So now there is a reason why we wanted to cover this as a demo. So there's two things. Obviously, the idea is great from Luis, and the functionality is kind of cool. You can flip between the sites, and the request and the requirement for the behavior absolutely makes sense. Now, the API which is used here is non-documented. It means unsupported. So because it hasn't been documented anywhere, we haven't covered that in the documentation, it basically is unsupported, and we can change that API any given day. And that's really the key reason why I wanted to actually have this demo covered here. It's a cool functionality, absolutely, but since it's using an undocumented API, you should be considering this more as a technical demo, and potentially something which will have a third-party API in the future if we can show the demand for the third-party API. And that's really one of the key points in all of this stuff as well. So there's a significant amount of investments currently going on SharePoint as a platform. A lot of those investments are actually going to go for first-party requirements and first-party web parts. And so a lot of the feature crew and feature PMs, they concentrate on having a cool, for example, let's say SharePoint homepage, the SharePoint home landing page, or some of the out-of-the-box web parts. They don't necessarily even remember to think about the requirement of the development experience. And that's something where we need you, the people in the audience who are in this community call, or also watching this video recording later, to submit, first of all, reporting potentially issues on the gaps, and then if it's actually an enhancement or a gap in our API surface, then creating a user voice entry in user voice so we can actually show the demand. For example, right now in the user voice, by far the number one request is the taxonomy REST API, which is having 1,226 votes, unless somebody just voted on that one as well. So having that amount of, or having few hundred votes on an API request, for example, hey, we need to have all of this stuff which Luis demonstrated in here, exposed in the supported API. If we can show the demand as a community, then we will, now I put my engineering hat on. Now, then we in SharePoint Engineering, we actually know that there will be people using these APIs, and that means that we will then offer documented supported APIs for those capabilities. Super important. Now, the taxonomy one, let's talk about that one, for example, in the Q&A one. We do have certain solutions on that one, the next webcast, and we have certain thinking on that one. There will be eventually a taxonomy REST API. I can't go to technical details why that has not yet happened, but now, how would I put it? Personally, I can see it already in the horizon, so it is coming sooner or later. Now, Luis, thank you for this one, and not taking anything away from Luis's awesome demo and awesome reverse engineering on what is actually possible on the platform. So we just need to make sure that we as a community also inform the engineering, for example, people like me in SharePoint engineering on the demand using official channels. So sending me, for example, a Twitter tweet or an email saying, we really need to have this API. That's not actually productive. That's not the right way of reporting the demand. The demand should be reported using the user voice. So we can actually then show that there's 300 other people who are asking for this API. There's clearly a demand for it. Let's actually fix that. Cool. Let's actually move on to a following demo. And let's absolutely have a Q&A in the end. And Sebastian's note, if you send an email with starting with Dear Vesa, that doesn't mean actually a bypass on my queue. So, all good. But I think we had who was the second one on the demo? Patrick? Did we lose Patrick? Patrick?
I was just waiting. Oleg is up next if you want to take over the presentation.
Hello, guys. Can you hear me?
Excellent.
Howdy.
Yep, all good. All good.
All right, I'll take over. Present.
Oh, now you're trying to take control of Luis's desktop. Well, we can actually watch you using Luis's desktop as well. That would be fun.
All right. Tell me when you can see the screen.
And we got it on my side.
As well.
Take it away.
Alright, so I'm a senior SharePoint developer, currently working at McCann Health. Started with SharePoint from around 2007 version, bounced around the globe for a bit, and now settled in Canada. Nice to meet you all. Thank you for having me. And I wanted to talk about the extending the site pages library with more fields, basically. And the main challenge with what we have now is content type is sealed. If we go there and try to add some more columns, for example. And so what? We can just go ahead and use PnP PowerShell or any other way to programmatically add them there. It's just that they will not be able to be seen in the user interface if a person would then go to the just pages library and try to populate that from ordinary out-of-the-box user interface. And that's where some additional code would go a long way. So let's say we got those columns somehow into our site pages. In my case, I just used the PnP PowerShell, and we can then start populating them. So one easy way, without any kind of extensions, would be to just go to a view which is not grouped by anything. So, for example, all pages, and in there we can use quick edit, and that would be enough. But who wants that? We want more code. So I'll try to show you how I have written an extension, a command set button basically, which you can click a row and then invoke a nice looking dialog from Office UI Fabric and fill the metadata there. And then I also written a complementary web part which will allow us to view those pages and basically filter them and have paging. So let's get to it. First, the demo. the site pages library, and just to demonstrate that we can switch to all pages without grouped view and just use the quick edit. And in my case, the columns are not actually managed metadata; they are plain lookups, single value lookups to other fields, to other lists. It easily can be multiple value lookups as well. My code would support that, and so that's not actually the main point here. Let's go back to the default by author list and try to click the row, and we see that there is my command set extension. And if we click there, it will just load the dialog and then wait for all the metadata to be fetched and present us. So however many lookup fields basically I would have in the site pages library, it would try to list to them all. And after 8, I think it will actually encounter a lookup threshold, and version 1 would fail, but since I'm presenting version 2, it will do as many requests as needed to fetch all possible lookups you might have for some reason if you decide to do that. I'm using React, so Office UI Fabric basically, that's a tag picker control, and I can try to start typing and it will just auto-suggest based on what is there. And if I would have my multi-lookups fields here, it would allow me to continue populating, but since it's a single value, it just does not allow me anymore. Okay, so that's that. Of course, if you select 2 or more, the button vanishes. Just a simple switch, which we, I think, get out of the box when the command set extension is provisioned through Yeoman. So I just use that. It fits perfectly. And then the web part. So it looks like that. It allows paging and filtering by those lookups. And all of the filters, well, in my scenario, are merged through AND, not through OR. So it's vegetables and red, for example. Nothing here. You can deselect red and try yellow. All right, and I can clear the lookup. And if we click on an item, it will, in the same page, invoke the dialog from Fabric controls and try to populate that with the actual contents of the site page. Let's investigate what are the properties here. And I must apologize, the properties will not take effect, some of them at least will not take effect when I click the apply button. I will need to refresh the page, but that's just technical demo. And if you are interested in this solution, it will be available on the SPFx GitHub repository in the example section. I think I have the pull request, but I'm not sure if it has gone through or not, but I hope it will. So let's try changing that to 3, apply, and also I have that switch here, which will show items not in a list, but rather side by side. With that. And regarding the refiners, how I call them, basically those lookup lists, fields, those would be listed here. When we open up the configuration panel, it actually does a request, a synchronous request to fetch all of them and list it there. And I allow basically two modes. If I just tick it and don't specify anything here, the values in category will be all of the items in the helper list. And if I do some command limited definer values here as a string, because I'm a classical hardcore guy and that's the way we used to do it, where they will appear in the definers here just as you specified. So for some reason you don't want to make a request when the web part is being loaded to grab the items from the lookup list, and you know you're only interested in several of them, you can type them here and save yourself a call basically. Well, at least part of the call, because I think I tried to batch them with SPFx calls. Let's hit apply here. Publish. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Also the clear button works, of course. I think I showed that. And yes, one more thing. I tried to make the web part as responsive as possible in the design. So if I would to collapse the browser a bit, they should jump one under the other. But let's see if I can. Oh, it's log into Mobile now. Bear with me. And see if I actually can show you the SharePoint app on my Android and how that looks inside the SharePoint application. All right. Here we go. So if I go to SharePoint app and click on the demo site, it should load that homepage, and you can see that it's pretty scrollable. And you can filter it out and clear it out, and even click on the item and see the details displayed correctly. And that's not it. We can even go to the pages library and invoke our command set there as well.
I have to say, Oleg, this is a great demo on the responsive capabilities, native responsive capabilities also in SharePoint Framework, because if you build your stuff using SharePoint Framework, this is what you get, which is brilliant.
Thank you, Vesa. And I also, all those items you see here, they are actually the document card, which I sort of, well, it's not supposed to be used like that, but I made it work. But yeah, it then becomes responsive. So why should we invest time in making our own components if we might want to reuse something that looks natively the same as the rest of the SharePoint? So yeah, that's basically what I wanted to show. And there is a lot of code there, but you can review it on your own leisure when it becomes available as part of the GitHub repository. And any questions, just let me know.
Great stuff. Thanks, Oleg. And as Vesa said, very cool to see it working across the different platforms and being responsive, and really shows off a lot of the different SharePoint Framework and Fabric capabilities. So great stuff. And I'm going to...
Patrick, if you don't mind, let me, because there's a Q&A anyway starting, and there was a good question related on the on-premises. So I quickly threw a quick PowerPoint slide on it. If I get this slide moving on the Skype. Come on. That's not the slide. Let me see. Oh, it's in the managed content. It's still uploading. And it is flipping that right now. So Todd asked around the SharePoint 2016 support and the SharePoint Framework support, and we talked about the SharePoint 2019 support. So I think it's worthwhile to clarify what will be supported, what's the probability of getting an update, for example, for SP 2016, and the experience. So let's see if we can get this slide on the other side. Unreal. Come on. It's not that complex slide. It isn't. It really isn't. Do I need to show it from my screen? I can show it from my screen. That's fine as well. So let me share my screen. And my primary screen, when you have 3 screens, you need to be careful on which one you actually share. And somebody needs to confirm whenever my screen is available. Yes, talking 3D to Skype probably helps. Cool. Okay, AC got it. Excellent. So that means that other people got it most likely as well. So if we think about the SharePoint framework and SharePoint, let's say the version. So obviously back in whatever time frame for on-premises, I can't remember when this was. This was early 2016, wasn't it? Almost more than 2 years ago, we released SharePoint 2016, or was it even earlier than that? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. Anyway, as part of that SharePoint 2016, that was really still kind of almost in line with 2013 end-user experience, and then at some point we started pushing out modern experiences in SharePoint Online. Now, in SharePoint Online, we released first a pre-version, then 1.0 version in February, 25th of February 2017. And then the 1.1 version was the one which we actually ported back to SharePoint 2016. So we basically said that as part of the feature pack 2, SharePoint 2016 feature pack 2, we will support SharePoint Framework 1.1, which will then enable modern web parts in on-premises, which is a great thing, obviously, because then you can build SharePoint Framework 1.1 customizations, and they will work both on premises and also online. Now, and I'll come back on the immediate logical question, follow-up question on that one. So how this actually happened was back in May last year, we forked SharePoint Framework from the version which we had at the time, which was SharePoint Framework 1.1, and then we molded and did the changes and modified SharePoint 2016 to support SharePoint Framework. So it takes a few months to make all of this happen. Now, what's going to happen then next is the SharePoint 2019, which is coming. I don't know if we have announced any dates, but probably will announce any additional dates in SPC. We'll definitely announce additional dates in SPC. Now, at some point during this spring, I can't tell you when and how and all of that, we forked SharePoint Framework. Well, actually, I can probably say that it was pretty recent fork on the SharePoint Framework or the whole code of SharePoint Online, and then we start polishing and making sure that it works in on-premises properly without the dependencies to the cloud, because on-premises customers cannot have a dependency on, let's say, Office 365 CDN. So whenever that fork happened, SharePoint Framework was at the version of 1.4.1, which is the latest version also for SharePoint Online. So you can kind of assume that the capabilities which are in 1.4.1 will be supported in on-premises with certain exceptions, because now the problem of this one is really that, for example, the 1.4.1 asset packaging or the CDN hosting has a dependency on Office 365 CDN, and you do not have that in on-premises, so we can't really ship that. Or it might be optional shipping of that one as part of the SharePoint 2019 release. Now, coming back on SharePoint 2016, so there's a logical question of, hey, but it would be brilliant if you would support 1.4 with SharePoint 2016. And trust me.
So I'm going to jump back to the slides, and we'll start to close out the meeting unless Vesa gets back on quickly. So I want to thank Luis and Oleg for those fantastic demos, really great stuff. And like I said before, if you would like to demo on this call, absolutely welcome and invite you to do so. Just reach out to myself on Twitter at MediocreBowler. I'm very happy to get you on the schedule. It won't always necessarily be the immediately next meeting, but we will get you on the schedule just as soon as we can. Glancing at the screen, I don't really see any other questions at this point.
Damn, how I hate Skype. It's just insane.
Oops. Jumping back, this did not get updated. Sorry about that. So our next SPFx JS meeting will be May 10th. May 10th is the next SPFx JS SIG call. The next general SIG call will be May 3rd. So I hope to see you folks on those calls. Vesa, I imagine you would like to finish your thoughts?
Yeah, I have no idea of which point I actually was dropping, but that's fine. So, but basically, I think it's pretty logical what is actually getting shipped, where is it getting shipped, and on 2019 we will support modern experiences, lists and library, lists and pages, and therefore you can actually build extensions in there. Now, reality is that whenever the 2019 will be shipped, there is already a newer versions available for SharePoint Online. This is just given. The cloud moves faster than on-premises because we can't update your on-premises without you giving us permissions to do that, and that's CUs and SharePoint service packs. Good. Anyway, on SPC, there will be absolutely more information on all of this. And this slide, which you saw, was quite speculative. Well, it's not really speculative. It's just explaining how things actually work. And hopefully that opens up the thinking on how we ship stuff. If there's any urgent questions, and AC, I do apologize if I took all of the time, but hopefully I answered some of the questions already in the as we were chatting on the Iron window. Any? Thank you, Philip, for fixing. Well, it wasn't me obviously fixing the extension bug, but still, no questions answered today. I can answer still some questions. Come on. Well, technically, if it's anything related on timelines, anything related on is this going to be supported when we can't give you a date. SPC is really when we announced new stuff and more details around the stuff which might be in the roadmap pages right now. So we'll update the roadmap, also slides after that. But I think that's pretty much it. Anything new regarding branding? Okay, we have 2 minutes. On modern, I think the only thing what we publicly said, we're looking into having the font support. Modern theming will be enabled in classic theme sites, which is kind of cool. Page layouts, we might have something on that one in SPC. I can promise this one. Any news on loading external libraries multiple times issue? Would love to have built. Yes, the library thinking is spec'd out. It is now waiting for resources to get implemented. So let's see when it's actually getting packaged. Most likely, unfortunately, not in 1.5, but potentially in the next version. But I think we're running out of time. Patrick, any last words for this community call?
Nope.
Cool. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your input. Please keep on asking things and give us feedback, and let us help you on this journey by telling us what's wrong. So thank you everybody, and we'll be absolutely in touch. Bye-bye.